Hi everybody, welcome to Why Should Enterprise Product Teams Care About Product Experience? My name is Heather Stables, and I'm going to be exploring this theme a little bit with you today, but I'd like to get to know you a little bit before we get started. There was a great slide this morning about all of the different roles that people represent here. How many people in the room are product managers? Good number. UX? Cool. Customer success? Awesome. Other? Other, what are some things? Marketing. Awesome, because I'm from Pardot. So, product adoption. Cool. Technical writing. Oh, that's fascinating. Wow, guides are such a great way to write technical documentation. Awesome. Well, now that I know a little bit about you, I will introduce myself to you. Oh, and my slide animations are apparently not going to work. Sorry, there was like a last-minute switch from Google Slides to PowerPoint. But a few things about me so that you know who's standing up here talking about these things. I work for Salesforce. I work specifically for Pardot, and I'm a product manager. And if you know Salesforce but not Pardot, Pardot is our B2B marketing automation platform. If you don't know what that is, like a few years I didn't know what that is, I will be talking about it little by little, giving you pieces of information about what marketing automation is about, because I'm going to be drawing some examples from our product. I live in Atlanta. I'm a Georgia Tech grad. I've been in Atlanta most of my life. So that's, GT is there to represent Atlanta as well as my alma mater. I studied computer science, so my background is actually as a developer, and that's how I got into product management. I always had a really strong interest in user experience and human and computer interaction. I collect hobbies. So two of them are represented here, and one of them is sewing, and the other one is figure skating. It's not just for 13-year-olds, it's something adults do. And in fact, actually, the US Figure Skating Adult Nationals is going to be in Wake Forest next month. So I will be back in this area of the country very shortly to be competing. So now that you know a little bit about me, I want to talk a little bit about this theme. How many of you work in enterprise software? Does anybody not work in enterprise? Okay. Who can tell me the difference between a user and a customer? Who's a customer?
Customer is more like a category of the user is more like a persona.
Okay. Maybe let me try a different term. User versus buyer. Yeah.
User doesn't have any input into the decision to purchase the enterprise product.
Generally not, right? Your buyer or your customer, the person who's actually paying the money or making the decision. And we saw a few different personas this morning who play a role in the buying process. In the enterprise world are often different from the person who is using it on a day-to-day basis. Now, this is different than the B2C space in a lot of cases where the person who is buying the software is the person who is also using it. But even in B2C, a lot of times you're not actually buying software. If you think about your software experiences in the B2C world, you actually are making purchases because of the experience that you had. If you think of an e-commerce site or something like that. But either way, the user and the buyer, the user and the customer in the B2C space is generally the same person. But in the enterprise space, they are often not. I think about the products that I have to use at work, and I have very little say most of the time in what I get to use. I've had a bit of a say in the fact that we get to use Pendo, and that's exciting, and that's those users getting a voice a little bit into enterprise software buying processes. But in a lot of cases, enterprise product teams are really concerned about the upfront sale. Those big purchases that are one and done, $1 million purchases, that once you've made them, why do you really care about how people are using your product? Well, the first reason, and I think you probably already know this, is renewals. In the SaaS world, you're never done, because next year you're going to be up for renewal, or maybe the year after that, or the year after that. You're going to be at risk if the users of your software are not getting the value out of it that your buyer or your customer thought it was going to have for your customer. So TechPro Research did this study, and they found that 69%, almost 70% of organizations are deployed new enterprise software in the past 12 months. And then over half of those, again, were replacing functionality of existing software. So it's not that they were adding new functionality to their company's repertoire of software. They were actually had software on site that did what they needed a new product to do, and they were replacing it. So it wasn't good enough at the time of renewal. And if you don't know who this is on the right, this is Sassy. This is one of Salesforce mascots. So Salesforce was one of the first in the SaaS space. That's why the cloud is such a huge part of the Salesforce logo. And that's why Sassy here has been our mascot. The idea is no software on premise. It's the renewal and SaaS model and all those sorts of things. But the perceived cost of switching software is lower in the SaaS world, right? So people are more interested in going to a different solution come renewal time because they think it's easier to switch. But not only are those switching costs perceived as lower in the SaaS software world, but also it's easier to integrate different tools that do one thing or another. So you might have a tool that does X, or you might have a tool that does X, Y, and Z. But if there's a upstart coming up, those companies that are able to focus on one particular area that do X better than you do, maybe they're going to say, you know what, we're going to get X to do this, Y to do that, and Z to do this. Or, you know what, I didn't need to do Y and Z anyway. All I really needed to do was X. Your software is not meeting all of my needs despite the value that was sold to me initially. I'm going to churn you out, toss you out, and I'm going to go with just X. So what I'd like to suggest to you is that maybe your product isn't what you think. So while you think your product does X, Y, and Z, that's the value proposition of your product when you go to sell it originally to your buyer, to your customer. What you might find out when you actually are looking at what your users are using it for, or the way that they're experiencing the product, that maybe it's not what you thought it was. And your focus needs to be somewhere a little different than what you initially thought. Sometimes a feature that's a supporting actor is a leading loser. I'd like to give you an example from my product. So in marketing automation, it's all about enabling your marketing departments to do more with less. You'd be able to send out emails, track opens, track replies, be able to then respond beyond that. If you see somebody is clicking on your emails and they're browsing your website and they're filling out forms, marketing automation is able to surface all of those things in order to be able to pass people over to sales. Sales folks get a better picture of their prospects, and marketing and sales are more aligned. So that's kind of the entire value proposition of marketing automation. But one key piece of that is sending out those emails. So one feature of our product is simply an email editor. Now, no one comes and buys Pardot to be able to create emails. If they do, they're probably buying the wrong product, and that happens sometimes. But we had this issue where there were two different ways to save an email in our product. The one on the bottom was a way to save your work without disturbing the master version. So marketing is often a team effort. If you have multiple people working on an email, this was a feature where I could work on an email and you could work on an email, and we wouldn't disturb each other until we went up to the top and we dropped down that little gear icon and we did save, draft, and exit. Can you see what might be a problem with this? Who wins, right? Yeah, I mean, like if you're both working on an email and you started at the same time, and then I submit mine and then you submit yours the next day, you've completely overwritten any changes that I've made. Now, it was really hard to convince people that we needed to fix this inside of our product, because people don't buy Pardot to send email. They have to send email. 92% of our customers are sending email through our product, right? But they're like, you know what, it's the automation, it's the surfacing information, it's tying data together. Our email is okay. So what that also meant is that we didn't have the resources to be able to create a full-blown collaboration experience inside. Think of a Google Docs experience or something for your email. What we ended up doing was making one save button. And save actually meant save. Now, we implemented some other features around that as well through user testing. We made sure that when only one user could edit at a time, but that other users knew, because it was locked, that locks were released after a certain amount of time, and that locks could be released by an admin in case you really had to get something out the door and your colleague who had the email open and locked was out to lunch. When we made this change, email went from our number 2 product reason for attrition to completely out of the top 5, just like dropped off the list. This was an example of when the way that our customers were experiencing our product, this like supporting actor, if you will, of a feature inside of what our main product offering is of marketing automation, was a major reason, not why people were buying the product, but why people at renewal time were looking somewhere else. So death by 1,000 cuts matters at renewal time. This is my personal area of the application that I own is email, and so I think about it a lot because our customers are in there all the time. And I had an engineering manager recently who was doing a screen share with a customer, and he was helping them out with their editor, and he noticed in their browser window, like in the next tab over, that they were Googling competitors. So even though that customer had not bought our product specifically for email, it was causing them so much pain in getting to the final value of our product that they were thinking about going somewhere else, and honestly thinking about going to somebody who didn't even do all the stuff that we did. So use your product data to discover where your customer is spending their time, but also are those turning into renewals? I was in a session with Adam Lohner from Pendo yesterday, and he was talking about looking at, not at the time spent in product, because that's not always a great indicator, but renewals, right? So, as I was preparing for this presentation, I got interested in products that took a turn from their original use. And I discovered one that I didn't know before, and do you know that Play-Doh was originally a wallpaper cleaner? I didn't know that. So in the early 1900s, when houses were primarily heated by coal and wallpapers were not made of vinyl and not washable and all those sorts of things, wallpaper cleaner was a hot commodity. And in fact, actually, the Kroger Corporation worked with the soap company in order to create this wallpaper cleaner. But by the mid-century, coal was being replaced by natural gas as the way that people heated houses, and wallpapers were being replaced by things that were more modern and could be cleaned with just regular soap and water. So then, what's to become of this wallpaper cleaner? Well, the founder of the company, or the CEO of the company at the time, had a sister-in-law who was a preschool teacher. And the preschool teacher had seen an article about how some people like to use wallpaper cleaner as a children's toy for modeling. And it was something that she had begun to implement in her classroom, and her kids had lots of fun playing with Play-Doh, and that's where they pivoted. So the product that you all know and love, because everyone's heard of Play-Doh, right, actually started out in life as a completely different product. But what I want you to think about is not just pivoting of product from one thing to another, but think about the hamburger builder by Play-Doh, or the fun factory, or the ice cream maker, or something like that. These are all toys that would never have been created if the product was still thought of by the product team as a wallpaper cleaner. So the second reason that I want to talk about why you should care about product experience is innovation. What your product does and what it's like to use your product are two different things. So I'll go a little bit deeper into marketing automation now. One main feature of marketing automation is the ability to create a program of things that should happen in your marketing campaign. So for example, I'm going to send out this email to thousands or even sometimes millions of people, and if someone opens it, then I want them to receive this email next. And if someone clicks the link, then I want to record that and adjust their score to say they're more valuable to sales, or I want to pass them over to a salesperson, or I want to send them a different email. Or if they don't open the email, then a few days later I resend them the same email, or I send them something different. So one major feature of marketing automation is the ability to create these programs, basically program out, usually in a visual fashion, what's going to happen with your marketing. That's what the feature is. But what we learned when Pardot was going a few years ago to to modernize the way that you scheduled these marketing automation actions in Pardot, what they discovered is what it was like for our customers to actually build out this automation. So if I had built the program, then I would go around to everybody in my office, I would add you to the program that I was going to build, and I'd be like, hey, Alex, I need you to open the email, but don't click the link, okay? And I'd be like, Bill, I need you to not open the email, and I need you to open the email and click the link. That's what I need. Okay, so I'm gonna send it out to you, and then I'm gonna see what happens. And so I send it out, and then Alex comes back to me and he's like, was I supposed to click the link or was I not supposed to click the link? And I was like, you were supposed to click the link, but if you already did you not click the link? Okay, that's fine. No, you did. I'm gonna have to start it all over again. There's all this anxiety around starting a program. So what that allowed us to do is to build in this testing feature into these automation programs, a way for a marketer to set it up and then pass somebody through it, like this orange goo, is like what we like to call it, could travel through the program, and at each step where there was a decision point, you could say, I'm gonna go down this path, I'm gonna go down that path, I'm gonna take a look at what that email looks like, I'm gonna start over again and see what happens if someone clicked no here, see what happens if someone clicked yes here. And so you could do this, you could do all this testing of different paths without having to coordinate across your entire office, and without that issue of people making mistakes. And also sometimes if there was a few days between emails in your marketing campaign, you had to wait that long in order to test and make sure that the program was doing what you expected it to do. So beyond what the product does, there was a lot of anxiety about actually pressing play. And when we introduced this new version of these marketing automation programs and this testing, we've seen the adoption numbers skyrocket, which in a market like marketing automation, where a lot of people are really new to the industry, getting people started and holding their hand and making sure that they feel comfortable turning it on helps add to the stickiness of your product. Because otherwise, they don't see the value. They say, you know what, I'm just using it for email, so I'm going to go somewhere else. So I want to say again that your product is maybe not what you think. The real value is sometimes beyond the immediate need, like in this case where the need was to schedule marketing actions, but really the value was in giving assurance to marketers that what they were going to do wasn't going to embarrass them. Because if you're in marketing, like one of your worst nightmares is sending out an email that wasn't supposed to go out. To the wrong people, the wrong content, incomplete content, that's really bad. So finding that out by looking at our users' experience allowed us to innovate and create a feature in our marketing automation software that really we haven't seen in any of our competitors. So think about, I saw, can you tell me your name? Because you're in marketing, I'm so sorry, like to call you out. Nope, behind you. Nope, didn't you say you were in marketing? Oh, technical writing, I'm sorry. Somebody over here was in marketing. Marketing, okay. Do you relate to that at all? Have you ever done that? Like, can you imagine that being your day, like having to run around from one person to another and try to make sure that everybody does the right thing in order to test your program? It's doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. No, yeah. So my third reason, that brings me to my third reason of why you should care about user experience or product experience as product people, and that is just very simply people. As I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was giving my introduction, I've always had an interest in user experience. And as I've kind of found my way through my career, I've sometimes worked a little bit closer to that and sometimes not. And I always love to explain to people who are not in the tech industry what user experience is. Because sometimes if you work in tech, you're used to like telling somebody what you do and getting that like blank nod. But when you start to tell them that user experience or product experience is about caring what it's like for them to use software, then all of a sudden everybody has a war story. And I remember very specifically being at an eye doctor's appointment one time and telling the lady, not even the eye doctor, but the lady who like collects information beforehand, that I'm like, I work on making those kinds of things easier for you to use. She's like, oh, let me tell you, they just released this update. And like, everybody has a war story because everybody has to use software at work, and most of those people are users and not buyers or customers. They don't get a say in it. So your product sometimes isn't what you think, sometimes it's somebody's daily nightmare. I was going to use a stronger phrase there, but apparently I'm not supposed to swear in these in these presentations, but sometimes it's somebody's daily nightmare, and friends and family are on the other side of your software. This is actually my mom. I think she's kind of adorable. But she, like many other people, has to use software that she doesn't choose at work. These are people who go home at the end of the day to families, to communities, to hobbies, to causes, to community service, all of these sorts of things that you have the opportunity, by caring about what people are doing on a day-to-day basis that they have no choice in at work, to give them extra space in their mind by peaceful days, by not having to wrestle with the software that they use on a regular basis, so that they can go home and spend time on the things that they really care about, that they can devote their energy that wasn't wasted at work on things that make our world better and on relationships with other people. I'm really fortunate to work at Salesforce's Ohana, our family, our people, is one of our core values. And so I don't know that it's always easy to make a case for caring about people in this way to your enterprise product team. But I do want to say that people matter, and think about who's using your software and how you can make their lives better in something that they don't get a choice in. But also on the area of people is that your coworkers matter too. And while this is everybody in your software organization, if you're in product, I want you to think specifically about your customer services or client services group. I got to be part of an effort a few months ago called the Pardot Promise. And this was centered around the fact that while we were building the next generation of marketing automation, that we had customers who are unhappy right now, but also customer service agents who are unhappy. People who day after day had to answer the phone and say, no, I'm sorry, it works like that. No, we're not going to be able to fix it. Day after day after day. And it's demoralizing. And if in your company your client services team is a resource, if it's a benefit, if it's a competitive edge for your company, then keeping these people happy, keeping these people engaged, keeping them excited about your product, understanding that your product team is listening to you and reacting to you, and implementing some of the things that they are seeing their customers struggle with, means that you're going to have better customer retention, which at the end of the day, sorry, not customer retention, but employee retention in the customer service side, which at the end of the day is good for your bottom line, as well as for morale. So just in summary, I want to bring these up again. So why should an enterprise product team care about product experience? Renewals, keeping your users and your customers happy, and coming back year after year, looking at what your product really is to your users. Innovation, what's going on beyond what they're actually asking for. I was talking to somebody earlier today about, that's one of the things I like to use Pendo analytics for, because it gives me an insight into finding out what those unexpressed needs are, someone said in an earlier session. Looking at that data and saying, what do people need that they're not telling me about? How do I get to the bottom of that so that we can build something that is beyond the immediate need and be really innovative in our marketplace? And then simply do right by people. Your own people, your family, my mom with the Hello Kitty glasses on. So take a look at your product. Is your product what you think it is? Take a look at the data. Talk to your customers, talk to your client services agents. Figure out whether or not how your customers are really experiencing your product in order to drive these things, keeping people happy, renewals, and innovation. So, thank you. Are there questions or comments? Yes.
What's been a big surprise in surfacing the analytics?
So like one particular thing, I work in email area, right? So this has maybe not been like a complete surprise, but it's been really nice to have the data behind it. Customers are way more likely to copy content than create new content. Yeah, so that's been something that I'm kind of like trying to drive towards more information about. Honestly, just like everybody, right? I was thinking about like my dad writing a Christmas letter every year. He goes back and he finds his Word doc from last year and he copies it over and he changes it. And, you know, when we create PowerPoint slides, copy, that's where we start from, right? Yes?
So I feel like this idea that every user really matters to understand that that's a real thing and that actually matters. Do you have any like insight or more like hard pieces of evidence to provide some decision maker to say, we don't just care about our customers, we really do care, we should care about what our users are saying?
Yeah.
From a business perspective.
Right. Yeah. One of the ways that we've been able to do it is by listening to our client services people. The more you can collect data around that, the better that you can make a case for how that's really causing problems. With our email situation, that kind of came out of a combination of support tickets, as well as feedback from our client services group. And then, sometimes it's just like that product conviction. We use those things to be able to buy ourselves some time to make that fix. But then when you get a number like it dropping out of the attrition reasons from like 2 to out of the top 5, then you're kind of proving something for the next time as well. Yeah. Yes?
How are you acquiring that attrition information?
That's collected by our customer service group. I actually don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. They, I think they track their tickets. They're, I think they're on desk.com, or they're transitioning, I can't remember, but they were the ones who provided me with that number. Because we were doing this joint task force where I'd like to talk about that just a little bit more. That was such a cool effort because we had numbers from like a forum, an ideas forum. We had ticket numbers, but then we also got together representatives from all of the branches of our client services group. So those are the support users, the people who implement, the people who we have a group called advocates, which are a little bit more like strategic resources, people you can ask about best practices and stuff like that. And we got a few of those people together and formed a task force to find out, to represent their organizations, but also to represent like the things that they didn't really have data for at that point, but their expertise is in customer service and seeing these patterns and things like that. So it was a combination of both hard data and soft data, and it was very effective. Yeah. Yes?
The software I work on also has a similar factor where we need to help users avoid embarrassment. Do you have other suggestions about doing that besides the workflow simulator? That was really beautiful. Other suggestions?
That's a good question. To avoid embarrassment.
You're about to press the launch button or like,
Yeah. I mean, different kinds of testing flows, but like figuring out what that fear is really rooted in. What is the thing that you really need to eliminate in order for them to feel okay pressing play? Because maybe it's not like the flow, maybe it's another item altogether, like whether or not the right data is going to be filled in or something like that. So taking the data that you have, but then starting to talk to some users to find that out, I find pretty effective to kind of get to the bottom of what's actually making them nervous. Yeah. Other questions? Awesome. Thank you.